Do you know exactly which models of Toyota or Lexus are built in which factories in Japan? Well, it's like a huge puzzle and it's not very easy to figure out. Fortunately, I've been to most of the factories in Japan, whether it's way south in Kyushu of Japan or right close to the Toyota head office in Nagoya area. So let me walk you through every single factory in Japan that is to do with Toyota or Lexus and explain to you exactly which models or which cars or trucks are built in which factory. Let's go. Now, before we get started, I do want to get this out of the way, and that is the speculation for 2025 Toyota 4Runner, which is a sixth generation, likely to debut sometime end of next year during the 2024 calendar year. Now, a lot of people speculated that this might move to Mexico plant, but based on my investigation research, the all-new Toyota 4Runner will stay in Japan, continue to be built at the Tahara factory, and that is something I've always maintained for a long time, and I'm almost 100% sure that will be the case when the new model comes out next year. The same story goes for the Land Cruiser Prado, which is a twin model of the 4Runner, and it's not sold in North America right now, but the all-new version coming out later this year is expected to land here in North America as a return of the Land Cruiser. That, along with its twin model, the Lexus GX, which will also be new for 2024 model year, will all still be produced at the Tahara factory in Japan. Now let's get back into the program. Welcome back. So why am I making this video? It's because many of you guys asked me exactly which models and which cars are still produced in Japan for Toyota and Lexus. And the whole thing is pretty hard to figure out because it keeps changing for one thing, and also the information is not easy to come by. So today I'm going to decipher the whole thing for you and tell you exactly which cars, trucks, and models are produced in which factory in Japan, and also give you a glimpse of exactly what the differences are in terms of those factories. Now, I'm fortunate because I was born and raised in Japan, so obviously I speak the language, and therefore I go to Japan a lot, and I have been to most of the Toyota Lexus factory throughout Japan, so I can give you some of my personal comment as well. But the first one I want to talk about is the one that we talk about a lot lately, which is the Tahara factory. Now, Tahara factory is actually not all that close in terms of distance because most of other factories are in the Nagoya area, but this one is in a bit of a distance, and in fact, it's a bit hard to get to. And I had to take a number of taxis and trains to get to Tahara factories, but I have been there about 5 or 6 times, and it is one of the older factories that's very traditional in approach. But because so many people that works there have been there for 25, 30 years, it has a very large number of what we call Takumi specialists. Takumi specialists are those people who have the highest level of knowledge and insights and wisdom when it comes to manufacturing and production, and they are responsible for making some of the best Toyota and Lexus models. And that's why so many of the Lexus models are produced in the Tahara factory, and there are also some Toyota models produced there as well, including our beloved Toyota 4Runner, one of the very few Toyota cars that are still made in Tahara factory, and really the only SUV that's sold in North America that's still built in a Lexus factory in Japan. But aside from the 4Runner, the closely related models, what we call the twin models, such as Lexus GX, are built in Tahara, as well as the Land Cruiser Prado, which is very similar to the Lexus GX. In fact, the two are even closer to each other than the 4Runner. Just that one is a badged Lexus for North American market, and the other one is badged as Toyota for the domestic or Japanese market. So the Land Cruiser Prado, Lexus GX, and the Toyota 4Runner are the closest in terms of the body shape and chassis and design, and they are all built under the same roof and the Tahara factory. But there are a whole bunch of other Lexus models that are built in Tahara as well, including the Lexus IS 500 that I did buy and own for a short time. And as you know, I sold that one for many different reasons and I don't have it anymore. But that's also built in Tahara factory, and you can tell that when I owned that vehicle and I looked at it very carefully, the quality is absolutely first class. There's nothing that comes close in terms of paint job, in terms of the body fit and finish, the alignment, everything is just absolutely world class. So let me give you the actual list right here. By the way, just to clarify, all Toyota 4Runners that we buy here in North America are indeed produced at Tahara factory in Japan, and so you don't have to worry about buying any 4Runners that are not built in Japan for the time being. And it's built alongside the Land Cruiser Prado, which is not sold here, as well as the Lexus GX,
which is built in Tahara, and that's the one that we get in North America, of course.
And there should be all new Land Cruiser Prado introduced this year as a 2024 model year, and we're expecting that to come back to North America, and that's going to be built in Tahara.
The Lexus IS is also produced in Tahara, as I mentioned, along with RC and RCF, and they are all sold in North America. But the Lexus NX is a bit of an unusual one because it is built in Tahara factory, but that's not the one that we're getting here in North America, because the Lexus NX that we buy here in Canada and the US are built in the Cambridge factory of Toyota in Ontario, Canada. Now, there's some exceptions in the sense that the Prime version, or the plug-in hybrid version, I should say, are indeed still built in Japan. So those NX do come from Japan, but all the other NXs are being built in Canada.
By the way, the slow-selling but beautiful Lexus LS is also produced in Tahara factory.
And that summarizes everything that's built in Tahara factory. Let's move on to the next plant, which is the Motomachi factory.
Next up is a very interesting factory which I absolutely love to visit, because this is the legendary Motomachi factory. Motomachi factory is what we call the training ground, or ground zero, for all things to do with Toyota production system. And Toyota sends people from all over the world to Motomachi factory to get trained on how Toyota system works and to learn about quality of manufacturing. So Motomachi factory is what we call the motherland or mother factory for a number of places in the world. But it's also a factory where some of the really specialized low volume cars are produced. That includes the handcrafted Lexus LC500 and also GR Yaris, which is not sold in North America, and the GR Corolla, which is sold in North America. These are actually produced in a separate part of the Motomachi factory. So for those people who have never been there, they tend to kind of group everything together as one Motomachi factory, but that's not correct. Motomachi factory is like a whole bunch of separate factories all placed under the same roof, but there's a section for the specialized low volume production that is separate from the more normal high volume production. So you have to remember that Motomachi factory consists of a number of different sections, and you will only realize this if you have been there. And Motomachi factory is a place I have been the most, probably about 30 times over the last 20 years or so. So I've been there a lot, and I've seen many different aspects of the Motomachi factory. But it is the most impressive place in terms of the sheer amount of knowledge and wisdom that reside in that factory in the low volume section that is producing the LC500 and GR Yaris and the GR Corolla and so forth, because those are the best of the best Toyota folks that have been taken away from different parts of Japan and placed in Motomachi factory because they are the only one that are capable of producing something complex and something that requires the highest precision and lowest tolerance for best manufacturing quality. Because as you know, something like Lexus LC500 have to have the best quality in the world. Interesting enough, Motomachi place is also where the new Beyond Zero operation is for the Toyota BZ4X and many other Beyond Zero models coming out. That's where these electric cars are produced as well. Once again, because the most experienced people are there. So Motomachi factory is the one I have one of the highest respect for, just because it has such a diversification of different products, different people, yet they have the highest capability to produce something very unique and something very special. So this is the one that I'm hoping to take people in the future, because before pandemic, they also used to open that place up for tours, not the specialized section, but the more general section. And perhaps in a year or so, when they begin to open up factories again for visitors, we can actually take you to Motomachi factory.
So what else is built at the Motomachi factory? Well, the twin model to the BZ4X, Subaru Solterra, is obviously built there alongside the Toyota Mirai, which is surprising, right? Because it seems to be a very different model from anything else built over there. But the most interesting one is the Toyota Century, the flagship, the Rolls-Royce of the Toyota model, is indeed built in Motomachi factory. They actually moved the production from what they call the Higashi Fuji factory, where I have been a number of times, and that's where the Century was hand-built for many years. But they moved it over to Motomachi factory because obviously the Higashi Fuji plant is now closed because they are building a brand new place called the Woven City, which is a major project for Toyota, where all the researchers and scientists from around the world are gathering to create a mega city for Toyota.
By the way, the all-new Toyota Crown is also produced in Motomachi factory, but strangely enough, Toyota also produces the Crown at the Tsutsumi factories. So I suspect maybe the one that's built in Motomachi is for the Japanese market, and the one that's built in Tsutsumi factory is for the overseas market.
So that summarizes everything that's built in Motomachi factory. What else is built in some other factories? Let's go through the details. There's still quite a bit of Toyota factories to go through, so let me speed up a little bit. Next up is the Takaoka plant, which is where the Toyota Corolla Touring, which is like a station wagon, and then the Corolla Cross, RAV4, and the Harriers are produced. Now, Toyota Harrier is known as the Toyota Venza in North America. And what's interesting here is that most of what's produced in Takaoka plant is for the Asian market, because the ones that we get here are produced in North America. For example, the Corolla Cross is built as the Mazda Toyota joint venture factory in Alabama, and the RAV4 was also coming from Kentucky and Cambridge, Ontario for the North American market, except for the plug-in hybrid version. And then the rest of it, though, do come from Japan. So, for example, the Toyota Venza is only produced in Takaoka plant for a market. So the Takaoka plant is not as interesting to visit just because it's slightly older factory. There isn't, that many Takumi specialists or anything like that. But it produces consistent high-volume products for mainstream items for Toyota. How many times have I been to this one? About 10 times, because this is used to be quite a popular place for us to visit. So that's the Takaoka plant. Now let me move on to Tsutsumi plant, which is another important plant in terms of volume. The Tsutsumi plant used to be a very important plant because it produced Corolla and the Corolla hatchback, which is called Corolla Sport in Japan, as well as the Prius. All of these models were very, very important for domestic market and also Asian market because they are high volume sellers. But obviously, recent times have changed a lot, and now RAV4 and other SUVs have taken top spots. Nevertheless, Tsutsumi factory is still very important. By the way, some variations of Camry is produced there as well. So we got Corolla hatchback, Prius, and Camry, including some of the plug-in hybrid versions for the Prius, are all produced in Tsutsumi plant. I've been to this plant maybe 5 or 6 times, and it's an interesting plant in terms of a learning opportunity because it's extremely organized, very efficient, and you can learn a lot about Toyota production system from this plant. It is a bit of a distance from other places though, so it always takes me longer to get there, but I do have fond memory of visiting Tsutsumi plant because that's where I learned a lot of things to do with Toyota production system.
And as I mentioned previously, the Toyota Crown is also produced at the Tsutsumi factory.
Now let's talk about Toyota Kyushu plant, which is located way south in Japan. It's quite a distance from any other locations, including the head office in Nagoya. You have to basically fly to Fukuoka area and then take a long bus ride or train ride from there. So I have been to Toyota Kyushu factory about maybe 3-4 times. Not too many times because it's far away, it's hard to get to. But this is an important plant because this is another one of Lexus factories. They produce many other Lexus models that are not produced in Tahara. These are smaller models for the most part, such as the Lexus ES, the Lexus UX, the NX, and then the all-new RX. That's all being produced at the Kyushu or Southern Japan factory. And also many of the hybrid components are produced here as well. Now keep in mind that the Lexus RX that we buy here in North America are being produced once again in Cambridge plant in Ontario, Canada. So we're not getting the RX version here from Japan, although the plug-in hybrid should continue to be produced in Japan. So that will probably be imported from Japan to North America. But all the other models, including the ES, which is moving away from Kentucky back to Japan, are being produced in Japan. So yes, if you buy the very affordable Lexus UX that's built in Japan, and then if you buy the Lexus ES moving forward, it will be built in Japan. Also, NX, much like the RX, have a dual sort of a citizenship, if you will, in the sense that the NX is produced in North America, in Cambridge, Ontario, as well as Japan. So the version that we get here are produced in Ontario, Canada, except for the plug-in hybrid, which is coming from Japan. So that's the Toyota Kyushu factory. It's an older factory, not as impressive when you look through it, but much like Tahara factory, these older plants have the folks with 25-30 years experience, and that's why the quality is so good. There's no wonder that Toyota keeps putting Lexus product to Tahara and Kyushu factory, where some of the most experienced people live and work. So that's the Kyushu plant. The next plant needs no introduction because it's the Yoshiwara factory where the legendary Land Cruiser 300 series are produced alongside the Lexus LX, which we do get here in North America, and also the beloved Land Cruiser 70 series, which is like a retro SUV that none of us can buy here in North America, but it's the one that we all crave to have. These are all produced in Yoshiwara plant, which is part of what we call Toyota Auto Body. And this is a bit confusing because Toyota Auto Body is indeed part of Toyota, but it's a separate company or separate subsidiary company, and therefore is treated somewhat differently, even though it's part of the Toyota family, and therefore still follows through with the same Toyota production system with as much or even greater emphasis on quality control and so forth. But it is a separate company at the end of the day, so when you go there, it does feel a little bit different. It's been a long time since I went to Yoshiwara plant, and I think I've only been there once, some years ago, but they don't open this factory for visitors or even for media or specialists like myself. Again, because it's not part of the mainstream Toyota models. But this is a very interesting plant, and obviously it produces lower volume product such as Land Cruiser 70, Land Cruiser 300, and the Lexus LX. And it does have a different level of skill set because it's focused on some of these very high-end products such as LX. So this is a part of the Toyota Auto Body that also have a few other plants, which includes the Inabe plant and also the Fujimatsu plant. Both of these plants produce some other variations of Land Cruiser 70 series and also small minivan called the Noah and Voxy, which we obviously don't get here. And then at the Inabe plant, for example, they also produce the minivans such as Toyota Hiace and also the Alphard, and even the Lexus LM, which is a fascinating product. Lexus LM is basically based on the Alphard, so it is a minivan, but it's a Lexus brand. It's a really cool car that we hope that we can get here at some point in the future. I don't think that's happening, but it's a really nifty product, and that's produced in Toyota Auto Body Inabe plant. So under the name Toyota Auto Body, you have three plants. The Fujimatsu plant, which I mentioned earlier, that produces Noah and Voxy and Land Cruiser 70 series, as well as the Inabe plant that produces the Alphard and the Lexus LM and basically minivan oriented, and then the Yoshiwara plant, which is the one that we talk about a lot because it produces Lexus LX alongside Land Cruiser 300 series and Land Cruiser 70 series. So this is the Toyota Auto Body. And we just got a few more plants to go, so let me go through that right now. Which brings us to another subsidiary of Toyota called the Hino Motors, which is again a separate company from Toyota. And usually Hino Motors is known for building commercial trucks and vehicles. But in this plant, they also produce, believe it or not, Toyota FJ Cruiser. Now, they did just announce they're going to stop producing FJ Cruiser for good, so that will stop indeed. But right up until recently, they were still producing FJ Cruiser for some African and Middle Eastern clients and customers. So all along, the FJ Cruisers were being produced at Hino Motor at the Hamura plant. Because of the fact that their focus is on commercial product, there's not too many consumer products that they produce. Occasionally, they also produce Land Cruiser Prado for special or limited edition models, and that's why the Hino Motors do get involved in car production, but not too very often. So that's the lineup for companies that are part of Toyota, but somewhat separated. Last but not least, Toyota also has a factory called the Toyota Motor East Japan, and they are split into two factories, the Iwate plant and the Miyagi Ohita plant. Both of these plants produces cars that, typically speaking, we don't get it here in North America, except for the CHR. We do get that in North America, but the one that we get here are often built in Turkey. The rest of the lineup at the Toyota Motor East Japan include the Aqua, Yaris, also the Yaris Cross, as well as some other cars that you probably never heard of, like a Sienta, and also Corolla Axial, Corolla Fielder, and then the Japan Taxi. This is the same taxi that we get a ride in whenever we're in Japan. There's a new version that came out several years ago, and that's built at the Toyota Motor East Japan. Believe it or not, Toyota has several other plants throughout Japan, located in many different parts of Japan. And these factories produce everything from engines to transmissions to a variety of components that supplies parts to the main factories in Japan. And this is only factories and plants in Japan. In addition to this, of course, Toyota owns factories across the world in Asia, in Middle East, Africa, and North America and Europe. And so you can imagine the huge reach that Toyota has in terms of global capability and global production. But today I really wanted to focus on the factories in Japan because so many of you guys are interested in exactly what models are produced in Japan and exactly which factory or which plant, once again, because that is so confusing and somewhat puzzling for many. So I hope that this was an interesting video for you as I deciphered the factory list in Japan. And I have been to most of these factories, but I plan to go to even more plants as Japan opens up for tourists and visitors once again. If this video was useful, I would really appreciate it if you can give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and subscribe if you haven't done so, because I really would like to continue connecting with you and talk about Toyota and Lexus models with you. Thank you so much for watching my video. Until next time, I'm signing off for now. Thank you again.